I do think there's that idea that we are, all equal in the eyes of God, and that doesn't mean that we're all the same. We are all equally valid and our experiences matter, and I certainly have experienced that, really feeling so held and cared for, amongst friends in Australia.
I identify as a queer person. I am non-binary now, but I have quite a fluid sexuality. So growing up in a Baptist church where there were sermons against homosexuality and stuff was disturbing, disconcerting. I felt I had to hide for most of my life, and so I didn't really feel at home.
I kind of find it confusing that other people aren't open to different ideas of gender identity or different sexuality, because I grew up with it just being part of. Some of my mum's best friends were gay. It just was.
I think I have been enormously grateful as an LGBTQI identifying person that Quakers has been a home to me and a welcoming place for me to follow my own identity journey as well as my faith journey, and those two things are not separate, because we don't believe that heaven is up in the sky and God doesn't come down here on earth. We think that we live in a one united, holistic world in which the divine and the timely are all mixed up, and we're looking for the seeds of love in everything we can.
I can think about ideas like the Trinity and go, three entities in one, and what does that mean? And there's a Holy Spirit and a Son and a Father. But as a feminist, and I was a feminist from a teenager, all that sort of very much male-centric nature of traditional Christianity was hard, and I was drawn even at that time to traditions that looked at the Holy Spirit as being more feminine to try and balance it. But honestly, the relief of coming into Quakers and not having to articulate in that sort of language to be understood by my spiritual community, such a relief.
Certainly my experience is that friends are open to learning new ways. My partner is non-binary, and I didn't really know what that meant when we met. And in learning about that, my ideas about gender have really shifted. And the way that our world puts people into, or either you're male or you're female, and then the identities that get built up around that, which can be incredibly empowering, but can also be really divisive and actually exclusive if somebody doesn't feel like they fit one of those binaries, or if someone feels like they move between them or is kind of along the spectrum. And I think, little girls are nice and wear pink and like dolls and be inside, and little boys are tough and strong, and all of that stuff is so damaging.
A friend that I didn't know in South Australia, who I had obviously heard of me and heard that I was non-binary, rocked up to me one day and just said, "Yarrow, what pronouns do you prefer?" And for me, not having to belabor that point with someone or just to be asked it, it was like, I love you already.
For a lot of people who've never thought about it, they think it's just about pronouns, and it's like, it's not about pronouns. It's about who somebody is, and how they identify and how they're seen and respected in the world. And I guess that's what it comes down to. If somebody says, this is my gender, this is my name, like, who am I to say, oh, no, but you look like, you look like a boy. Are you sure that you're not a boy? Are you sure? How is it my place to make that decision for somebody else?
Without regard to Quaker, I am a little bit of a libertarian. So I accept anyone, anything, sex or anything else. I respect people's opinion, way of life. So it includes issue of sexual orientation, so it's non-matter to me.
I'm still touched that the Quakers were so early to accept and acknowledge same-sex relationships in the Society of Friends, because to me that should be true for everyone, but many, church communities are still wrestling with that today. But for Quakers, it's fairly simple. It's like, well, what's the heart of this? Two people love each other. Do we want to support them in that relationship? It's not like there are no beliefs around that, but it's like, what do you need? How are you actually different from me in your love? And I think that understanding that no, you were not, we are not different in that. So there are so many things that help me to be at home in Quakers.
I think marriage equality is important. I think, it's hard when we talk about same-sex marriage because there are lots of people who don't identify on one of the binaries.
The concept of marriage itself is obviously a contentious one, and I have my thoughts on it, but some people want that experience and that they shouldn't be denied that experience simply because of whom they choose to be with.
I personally haven't been part of a lot of conversations about what does this actually mean and what are we actually doing to put this into place. And I think Quakers are really active in signing petitions and going to rallies. I know that the open letter that was written by the presiding clerk at the time was really important and meaningful and shared quite widely. So I think it's important that we have a voice in these issues and that we are speaking up, for equality, for equity. And I think that the conversation continues to grow and evolve.